And that's the type of training.
Is there a cat lying?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Hi,
like
honey.
the light disappeared. It's warm. I can understand why.
Gosh. I'm so sorry.
Well, that's okay. I understand.
Oh no.
I would too.
My name is Crystal Sujong Cho Jones, and I'm mixed, or what Koreans would call gyokbo. Well, I grew up in the Midwest in the United States. I moved around a lot, Illinois, Indiana, and Minnesota. I lived in Carthage, Illinois, which is a really small town and surrounded by farmland. And that's where I lived with my father. And I went to university to the town 30 minutes away from my town, which is called Macomb. And I lived there and while I was doing my undergrad there. And that's predominantly where all my friends are at now. I miss the open space and nature. That's something that I really love about Korea is the mountains and the nature. Like, I lived in the Midwest, so there's not really any mountains and stuff, but lots of farmland and it's hilly and flat. And so that's something that I really miss. I like the quietness. Waking up to birds singing is one of my favorite things, and so whenever I hear birds singing when I'm in Korea, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful. Like, I really like hearing it, and it's something I don't hear very often because in the cities, especially like Seoul, it's lacking nature and green, and it's really kind of not as pretty. Well, my story is because I'm half Korean. I'm no stranger to Korea and I've been here before, and when I was living in the States, I was in poverty. I really worked hard in school, tried to save up as much money as I could, that once I finished university, then I would come to Korea to start a new life and to work as a teacher because it was something that I thought about doing. I enjoy teaching, I enjoy tutoring, and education is like my passion. And so I thought Korea would be a great start for that. So I saved up what I had, sold things, came to Korea to work for a government program called Talk. And if I didn't pass the health check, then I would have been homeless and stranded in a foreign country because I wouldn't have enough money to go back. That's how desperate I was to get out of poverty in the United States, because no matter how hard I worked, I was on disability. I really tried to, I was practically surviving. Nothing I did worked, even though I graduated top of my class. It was really difficult. So I thought the only chance to get out of that is maybe start somewhere new in another country. And Korea was always been like a second home to me, so I thought that would be a good place to start. Well, I definitely wanted to broaden my knowledge about the world. Also, I wanted to learn more about my heritage, and I felt like the best way to do that is to be completely immersed in another culture, in another country, far away from what I know and I'm used to. I've been brought up in kind of like a Korean upbringing, but it's not the same when it's like in the United States. It's completely different. So that's something that I wanted to experience for myself, to be, you know, also a better educator as well. Experiences through travel and interacting with people of different cultures has really helped me understand better about the world around me and the people I interact with, and to remove any assumptions or ignorance I may have about people, which is what I want. As an educator, I don't want to be ignorant of things. I want to be the best teacher I can be for my students. I'm from the United States, but I've lived in Korea more than once. I would say this is my longest time living in Korea, for 7 years, coming July. I'm currently a graduate student in special education. I'm also doing my research here in Korea. I'm now an English teacher at a Yuchiwan, or a kindergarten school. Okay, biggest difference for me is how disabled people are treated here and how they're looked at. A lot of places are not accessible for disabled people, which was very frustrating for me. I can only imagine for others too, both Koreans and non-Koreans alike. I think that was something I really picked up very quickly when I came to this country, compared to the United States where it's by law they have to make it accessible in every aspect of society, like the workplace, buildings. If it's not accessible, you cannot build it. It's a big deal in the United States. And here in Korea, it doesn't seem all that much. Like, they have some accessibility, but majority of buildings is still not accessible. They don't have automatic doors. That's another thing that I've noticed pretty quick. And I've seen people in wheelchairs and they're having a hard time just getting around. Same thing with like elevators. A lot of able-bodied people use elevators when they don't really need it. And then there's like elderly and people who are disabled like me who need it and they don't get off. They just use it, they stay on it. They don't seem to consider anyone who has some kind of physical disability. They just don't care. And that's something that can be very frustrating to navigate in this country and to get around. It's sometimes very difficult. In America, elevators typically are pretty decent size. I've seen some pretty small elevators here in Korea where I'm just really surprised and I was like, how does a wheelchair fit into this, right? That's like one, like the size of the elevators. They're pretty accessible. There'll be like more than one. In Korea, if you press the button, it will just skip the floor and just like go all the way down. So I feel like how like the programming of the elevators are not very good. Do you know what I'm talking about? They don't always stop at each floor. They'll just like, it only goes up, it goes one way up, it'll stop at floor, and then if it's like going down, it will just like only stop at floors that's going down or something like that. That was like one, or I don't know, like the programming was just really strange to me, so it just seemed like it would take forever. But in the United States, it's not like that. They always stop at the floor, they don't skip. And if there's someone who definitely has a physical need to use the elevator, they let them go in first. In Korea, it's every man, woman, child for themselves. Like everyone just rushes in and stuffs themselves in there and don't even consider the people who would need it. I would sit there for like 15 minutes waiting to use an elevator because I don't look disabled. So I have this thing what people call invisible disability. I suffer with chronic pain. My spine is deteriorating rapidly than normal. I have scoliosis and radiculopathy. Radiculopathy is when the spine is being compressed and is pinching my nerves. That can be extremely painful. Or same thing with my spine degenerating. There are instances where I can't walk, or it's hard for me to move and to get up and to just do anything. And then scoliosis is my crooked back. So it's just like a whole bunch of other things happening all at once. And I'm in constant pain all the time. And I have to constantly mask it. It's exhausting. And people don't understand. It's like, you must not be in pain if you're not crying. And I'm like, no, I don't want to get to that point because then I would rather die than experience that kind of pain. But no, I am in pain, and please believe me when I tell you that I am. Just because I'm not crying doesn't mean I'm not in pain. I think a culture shock for me when I was a kid was the toilet in the ground. That was like not my expectation. I would have to say, as a kid, I was like 14, I think, when that happened. I had to use the bathroom really bad, and I kept coming across bathrooms, public bathrooms, where it was like toilet in the ground, and I was like, not ready for this. So I was like, I need to sit on something, because I was afraid I was gonna like fall in or something. So that, I think maybe my expectation was something as simple as that, is not not using a toilet that's in the ground, actually having like an actual, you know, nice toilet seat. I would say that experiencing xenophobia is, I mean, I've experienced it in the United States, but seeing it here and experiencing it here is like not something I was expecting, I guess. Because I always thought that people would be polite, you know, and nice. Experiencing it was just like, okay, well, you know, I guess this is where we're at then. Also, like, how I'm treated differently as a foreigner, even as a disabled foreigner too. I would get a lot of like stares or glares, them asking me if I'm a Russian Saddam, or where am I from, and then they don't believe me I'm from the United States. They think I'm like from Turkey or I'm French, and then they don't believe me. I have noticed that I do get treated differently as being a Gyopo, for sure. Because I mean, that's something I can't hide. It's on my passport, it's on my alien registration card that I have an F4 visa. And so I do get treated differently, and I do have a Korean name. Those can be good and bad. It really depends on the Korean, I guess, that I interact with. Well, like my last job I worked at, it was a very toxic work environment. I was definitely treated differently compared to all the other foreign teachers. The administration, who are run by Koreans, definitely treated me differently. They would bully me, and they wouldn't bully the other foreign teachers. They would change my schedule at the last minute and like not even consider me or like meet with me about it. They would just tell me that you need to do this, and that made me really pissed off because it like completely destroyed my class lesson and the plans I had for that day. They didn't do that to the other teachers. Like if the other teachers did something wrong, they got a pass. If I did a mistake, even something that's minor, that's not a big deal, they would blow up and make it a big deal like I did some horrible offense. That kind of stuff, and then, you know, put me into a different box compared to the other foreigners. That's why I don't like letting Koreans know if I'm Korean, because I don't want them to treat me differently. And I know because I don't look Korean. That's another thing, like they'll just get upset and say, oh, well, you should be speaking Korean, why don't you speak Korean? And I'm just like, I'm sorry, like, I'm trying, I'm making an effort, but you don't give me the opportunity to speak Korean at work because you don't want me to. You want me to speak English with my students, so how am I supposed to learn Korean if I'm supposed to be speaking a different language? Bullied for speaking Korean when I was living in the United States. That was actually my first language. I spoke it fluently. And then English, I didn't even know any English when I started school. And this teacher kicked me out of school, told my mom I couldn't come to school until I spoke English. She couldn't teach me English because she was learning English herself, so I had to learn English from my babysitter, who was an immigrant from Italy, and then I had to teach myself English as I got older. And so I have a lot of, I guess, trauma when it comes to speaking English and Korean, because no matter where I'm at in the United States, you're in America, speak English. You're in Korea, speak Korean. It's like, I can never get a break. Someone's gonna be offended that I can't speak a language. At least I'm making an effort, but they don't see it that way. I'd like to talk about being disabled in Korea.
Okay, what's it like to be disabled in Korea?
It's very difficult. It's like hard. I mean, when I was dealing with the severity of my chronic pain in my last job, I mean, it was so hard, and my job didn't care. They threatened to fire me if I couldn't work. Thankfully, the current job I work at the kindergarten, they're very understanding and supportive and try to accommodate. But again, that's not the reality in Korea with a lot of places, especially the work culture. It's like you can't complain, you can't show emotion, that's a sign of weakness. You should always be working hard, and if you don't, you're not trying hard enough, and you should just pull through and do it. And you can't when you're disabled. It's not how it works, because working your butt off ends up hurting yourself even more. I end up in the hospital, which has happened. I was working so hard that I end up in the hospital so many times. I've lost count. That hasn't changed. Like, they still, even though they're trying to accommodate and be supportive, they're still having me work hard. I don't have really any breaks. I only have like one 15-minute break out of 9 classes I'm teaching, 6 of them is 30 minutes long, back to back. That's the hardest part.
What would you like Koreans to know about the disabled experience?
We're people. We're not second class. Just because we're disabled doesn't mean we're incompetent and incapable, or that we're stupid or dumb or ignorant or something. It's not true at all. Just because we have some kind of mental disability or physical disability, we're still just as capable to thrive and, you know, live a fulfilling life and do really well in something. I'm passionate about being an educator. Just because I'm disabled doesn't mean I can't teach. Oh, I think they need to be more understanding and supportive and try to accommodate to their needs rather than bullying them or shaming them or making them feel inferior, because we're already having a hard time as it is. Like, we don't need someone to make it even harder. The friends I've made here, like, I have a lot of friends here. More than I actually expected I would ever have. And I've made some really great friendships here that it's going to make me leaving this country so much harder. Like, I love my job, like my current job. I love the administration that I work for. They're really nice, they're so sweet, and they want me to work for them forever, but I can't. And it's gonna be really hard to say goodbye to them. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get really emotional when it comes to that point. But yeah, I think that's like the best thing for me is just the relationships I've built here. The age is put to a standard of how people are treated. Same thing with status. It's a very big deal here. So like if someone's rich or if they're older, they're like more respected and people just assume they're good people or whatever, and that's really not true. I'm always speaking respectfully to people, no matter who I am encountering, young or old. I always try to, you know, be polite and not assume and be very genuine about it, and that's something that I keep coming across. And then when they find out that I'm like older than them, or, you know, I'm from the United States or something like that, then they'll just treat me differently, and I just don't appreciate it. It just seems very two-faced. I think I'm a bit more aware of my culture, I suppose. Like, I'm trying to be more understanding, try to see it in the point of view of Koreans. For example, how knowing its history, and especially with like how much has developed in such a short period of time very quickly, has really changed the dynamic in the culture and society and the people within it. And so like they're trying to modernize it. In my opinion, I feel like they're trying to modernize it to make it like very closely related to how the United States is. Like, there's a lot of fast food. So alone, I was really surprised that there was actually like American theater, like Phantom of the Opera and Chicago and those things. Like, I was really surprised to see that, because like I haven't seen that in Korea before. The music as well reminds me of like American music back home, except it's Koreans singing. Like hip hop, for example. A lot of the hip hop is very similar to hip hop back in the States. What have I learned about myself? I feel like I've learned a lot. I think I've really built on my boundaries coming to this country that I didn't really have, I feel like, before. My identity, even though I had to keep my identity secret for being queer and disabled, and, you know, having a mental illness and a mental disability as well on top of that, I still was able to keep my identity and know who I am and be able to share it with people who I felt deserved it, which, you know, I have been able to, but in the workplace, not so much. That's a big issue I have about living here. But it has helped me to understand like why. It's because of the culture and mentality, and it actually helped me understand why my family treated me the way they did, because they had the same attitude about it. The shame of having a daughter who has a mental illness and who is disabled, you know, things that they don't accept. That was a culture shock. Big culture shock was like, I remember when I came here when I was young in Korea and I didn't see many disabled people, and then years later, like when I became an adult in my 20s, I started seeing more disabled people out in public, and I was like, a surprise to me. I was like really happy to see this, but it was like really late in the timeline. But it's, you know, it is slowly changing, and I really am hoping that it will change for the better. For me, it's helped me understand where I am in my life and what I need to do that's best for me, and what relationships are important to keep. I had a fear of like trying to cling to all relationships even if they were bad for me, and now being here, it's like, nope, I'm not gonna, you know, keep a relationship with someone who is not respectful of my boundaries or respectful of who I am as a person. So that's helped me grow as an individual, of like knowing what I want, what I value in my life, and who I want to share it with. America can do better with its gun policy and universal health care, which is lacking because their medical system sucks. It sucks ass. Like, literally. Like, it's awful. As someone with a disability, who've been on disability in the United States and then coming to Korea, I was like, I wanted to like cry. I don't know if it's from joy or rage, because it was like, I just never thought my medical bill would be so fucking cheap. And that's what blew my mind. Like, the medication was super cheap and affordable. Just seeing the doctor, no co-pays, just go right in. And then they give me a bill. So like, for example, seeing my gynecologist, it was like 5,000 something won. And I'm like, what? Just when I first came. Because in the States, it'd be, oh gosh, hundreds if not thousands of dollars. It's so expensive. And then there's a copay, so I'm not even including a copay of like $50 or something like that. And it's different for each state, so what I'm saying is not going to be probably the same for other states. It may be a lot more, it might be a little bit less, but regardless, it's still really expensive. It's insane.
What is copay?
Copay is the money that you have to pay before you can see the doctor. Before they can allow you to see the doctor, you have to pay a copay. You'll be charged a lot of money for just emergencies. Like, I would literally refuse to go into the emergency room because I knew it's going to cost me thousands of dollars. Ambulance alone can be $500 or more just to use the ambulance. So I would say, don't call the ambulance, just drive me there or let me die. Like, either way, I'm not paying that. But here in Korea, like, there are some things that are expensive, like MRIs, which I have to get a lot of, really expensive. The national health insurance doesn't pay for it, which is really disappointing. But at least it's still affordable compared to what I would have to pay in the United States. When I was in Jeju, I was, at the time, my fiance, we were just friends. We weren't even engaged or dating or anything, we were just friends. And I was visiting him in Jeju, which is where he does his research for his PhD. I don't know anything about Jeju, so I only learned from what I got from my fiance Tommy. And he let me stay at his place, and we like slept in separate rooms, and I slept in the living room on the floor, like Korean style, which is what I like. I had a very disturbing dream. In the dream I was like walking in like kind of like a traditional Jeju Hanok style kind of like village and cobblestones and stuff, and as I was walking, and then a couple feet away from me, a ghost came out. And I know she was a ghost because her hair was down and she was wearing white hanbok. She blocked my path and I stopped. I was very disturbed and I said, I can feel the energy. She wasn't something that was positive, but she wanted to attach herself to me. And I said, no, go away. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And she didn't like that, so she just like rushed forward and like grabbed me. And I pulled away and yelled like, no, let go of me. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And then I woke up in a cold sweat. And I told Tommy, and he said, well, yeah, we aren't far from the oldest cemetery in Jeju. I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, I'm a sensitive. It's been said that people think I would be a shaman if I was never a teacher. And I've had weird experiences with like haunted places, not even knowing it's haunted. But this place wasn't haunted, it was next to the oldest cemetery in Jeju. And I had this dream and I told him like, okay, well, you need to let me know if we're going to be crossing some place that is haunted or it has a cemetery. I cannot be a part of that because somehow it affects me and I see things. And so yeah, that was the most interesting experience I've had in Korea, was seeing a ghost in my dream. Best place in Korea, I would have to say that is Gyeongju. Gyeongju is my absolute favorite place to go. I used to teach there. It is rich in Korean history. Like, its nickname is called the Museum Without Walls because there's literally so much historical artifacts and sites like everywhere. I mean, I would come across it and I'm like, whoa, like, what is this? You know, they're still excavating there. And it used to be the biggest city in Korean history and the longest running dynasty, the Shilla dynasty. My fiance and I's favorite place. It's just absolutely beautiful. We love mountains, and we plan on actually having our wedding there. And we're gonna have a traditional style Korean wedding wearing Shilla style hanbok, because it's like our favorite hanbok. That was my favorite hanbok when I was a kid. Like, I had a little doll and it was like Shilla style. And I was like, oh, it's my favorite. So it's like a dream come true. I'm going to miss the universal healthcare, the affordable healthcare, affordable medication, Korean food. Oh my god, I get Korean food withdrawals if I don't have Korean food. It's gonna be so hard because where I'm gonna be living, it's not easily accessible to have Korean food or to like get ingredients to make it. Oh, and the fact that there's no guns. It's so safe. So safe, you can leave your stuff out and no one will touch it. You can misplace your phone or your wallet and you'll get it back. Like, I like the honesty in this culture. It's pretty safe at night. Just, yeah, I'm gonna definitely miss that so much. I don't want to go. I really don't want to leave. I really don't. I want to stay here.